Well, welcome everybody uh, to today's presentation. It's clearing the log jam. It's this is one of those things I thought about, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But I thought about this whole presentation uh, back when I was in Botswana this year. It was pretty apparent that when I got back home, and I'll explain all this more in a minute. Pretty apparent when I got back home that I was going to have a lot of images to deal with when I got back home. So I started thinking about it. I'd already sort of started down that path of how can I change up my workflow and how can I do things a little bit faster and more efficient. And this is what I've come up with so far. It's a pretty good, like I said, it's a simple two-step guide to speeding up the whole workflow. And so with that said, if you don't know me, my name is Russell Graves. I'm coming to you live from Hackberry Farm, Dodge City, Texas. I always give a weather update for some reason because that's what us country folks do. But it's been unseasonably warm here in Texas, but I think all that's going to change this weekend. We've been trending about 10 degrees above normal temperature, so it's going to be about 90 today, 88, 90 degrees, something like that today. A little bit warm, but the air is not that hot, so there's a cool breeze blowing, and it looks to be a beautiful day outside. One of the things that one of the quotes I added to this presentation, by the way, is from one of my favorite classic country music artists. Because sometimes whenever I'm back home working on pictures and trying to work on clearing that log jam, I feel like Merle Haggard when he sang "Working Man Blues." Keep my nose to the grindstone. I work hard every day because to me, that's the least fun part of photography is you go out and you take pictures and then come back in and having to deal with all of them. And like me, I've got a heavy trigger finger, and so I take lots of pictures whenever I go somewhere because I take pictures in that regard. And I think everybody ought to adopt this same mindset too. You go somewhere, maybe the only time in your life that you ever go to that place. And so you do yourself a favor to take as many pictures as you can while you're there and just deal with them later. And so hopefully the strategies I'm going to teach you today will teach you how to deal with all this mountain of pictures you're bound to take and really help you kind of make it more efficient to get through all those pictures. And so, I'm going to give you the solution, but we got to outline the problems first. This is the elemental truth of it all. Nobody, at least nobody in this audience, buys a camera with the intent to take fewer pictures. Every one of us, when we get a camera, we know we bought that camera to take pictures. And so as time goes along, and if you really get into it, you're just going to be taking more and more and more and more pictures as time goes along. So the question is, how do you handle all that big workflow? And then another truism, it's fun to go out and take pictures, but for me, it's not as fun to deal with them when you get home. I'm an outdoors person. I love being outside. I love exploring. I love just driving my tractor around in circles when I get a chance here on the farm. Love doing all of those things. Love thinking about what's next in my life. The thing I don't love, I mean, it's a necessary evil, but the thing I don't love is sitting down and going through all those images that you just took to try to make some sense, to try to organize them and do everything else. Today, I'm not going to talk about the organizational part of that. That's a whole other webinar I've done in the past, and I can do it again in the future if someone wants to, because my whole system's always evolved, and so I come up with new ways of doing things I used to do differently. Like that's the spirit of today's webinar. But today, I'm going to talk about two simple steps you can take to really speed up the workflow, and I'm going to put some math behind it too and show you how it works. Most people, including the way I used to do, use a singular approach to manage your image collection, both the new images that you're taking today and the old images you've got already on file. And the singular approach I mean by that is most of us use Lightroom. Lightroom is a great tool. It's not the best tool. It's one of those tools. It's like the Swiss Army knife of software. It'll do a little bit of everything, and it does a little bit of everything pretty good. But there's a couple of things, in my opinion, it doesn't do great. And that's where we're going to develop a workaround today. And then so more of the problems we get into with today's modern mirrorless cameras, and this is a fairly new phenomenon for me. I've been shooting mirrorless probably 4 years now, I'm guessing. I used to shoot DSLR, and with DSLR, so I went from, to give you a little history lesson, I went from really watching how many pictures I was taking when I shot film, because it costs money. I mean, every time you press the button on the camera using film, you could hear the cash register going off in the back in the back of your mind, and so it just cost a lot of money to shoot film. And as I switched to digital, I started taking more and more pictures, because I was learning new techniques. It's like playing the slot machine, but using the casino's money. It doesn't cost to lose. You can take as many pictures as you want. If you mess up, you just delete them. But when mirrorless cameras came along, it took that whole mindset that I already had and put it on steroids, because now with modern mirrorless cameras, and you got, I've got cards that are 512 uh, gigabytes in storage. You got the high frame rates. They'll shoot, the cameras I have are Canon R5s. They'll shoot 30 frames per second. I know like the R1 and R3 and the Nikon Z9 and some of those really high powered cameras, they can do 120 frames JPEGs a second. So my point is, it's easy, really, really easy to take lots and lots of images. And believe me, I'm guilty of all that. And so the log jam I keep talking about occurs when you get back home and you have to deal with all that, because it's fun to go out and make all those pictures, but all of a sudden when you bring those memory cards home, you've got a gigantic log jam that jams up the system, because all of a sudden when you've got to spend the time to get them on the computer and sort through all of them and make room for the next batch that's coming in, it slows the whole works down. So I just redefine it here. Log jam is a point where the image editing process slows way down. And for me, it comes down to two pieces. It's the keep and cull process. So in other words, it's that first step that I'm trying to decide which images do I keep, which images do I get rid of. I'm a believer in getting rid of bad images, because I tell people in my workshops all the time, don't fall in love with something that's not going to love you back, and a bad picture will never love you back. And so I'm a believer, if it's not a good picture for the basic criteria that I try to keep, I get rid of them. So that keep and cull process, just getting rid of the bad ones, keeping the good ones, slows me down. And then that first edit process, going through and just trying to decide which pictures I'm going to edit and which pictures I'm going to not edit, and then how to speed that up. And one of the things I think about all the time for efficiency's sake is just building strategies until the software develops to the point where it's pretty good, and it's coming. There will be a time when everything I'm telling you today, the point will be moot, because we'll have some kind of AI software that can go through and pick out the good pictures from the bad pictures and let you decide. And I've tried a couple of those elementary systems. For nature photography, it doesn't work great because the systems can't discern. For example, if you've got a deer standing in a bunch of trees, it can't figure out what the subject is and whether it's in focus or not. So until those systems really develop, we've got to do it the old manual way and lay our eyes on each and every one of the pictures. And so my solution is this, and this one we'll share with you. So the way this is going to work today is I'm going to share the solution with you. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. We'll back up and look at them again. And in the end, I'm going to distill it down for you in simple 1-2 language. Do this first, do this second, and then it'll surely help free up a lot of this log jam that we keep talking about. So what I've done, and in this, I've been working on this for about a year now, but I finally adopted the system I'm going to use. I developed a simple multi-platform systemized approach to it. And what I mean by multi-platform, I use 2 pieces of software now instead of just using Lightroom to go through my pictures. And this is the big thing for people here. Once you develop a systemized approach and you develop that system, it's the same way. If anyone's ever worked in manufacturing, or if you've ever worked in any kind of business where there's a process involved, the process only succeeds if you follow that same process each and every time, because that's how you build efficiency. And so once I develop this system, I just do the same thing each and every time, and it's predictable, and I don't have to think about what I'm doing, and it really helps alleviate these log jams. Now, some of what I'm talking about, you're shaving seconds off the process, just a couple of seconds per image, but I'm going to show you how those seconds add up over time. Oops, there we go. A lot of these pictures I'm showing here from some recent workshops, by the way. And so here was my typical workflow in the past. This is the Lightroom interface. I would download the pictures in Lightroom, like a lot of us do, and kind of go through that process. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time, but I would do it anyway. But that's kind of a set it and forget it. I really don't count the time it takes to download pictures, because I'm not sitting there in front of the computer looking at it. Usually what I'll do is I'll set it to download. It's like Ron Popeil's rotisserie oven, if you remember that from a few years ago on the Ronco commercials. His rotisserie oven, his famous line was, set it and forget it. And that's what I do when I'm downloading pictures. or I used to do. I'd set it and forget it. I'd start the download process, walk away, come back to it later. So I don't really count this part as any of the time, but this is how I do it. I download the pictures first, and then once they're kind of in my library, I would sort of go through them, pick out the ones I would want to edit, and then in the end, I would start looking at individual pictures and start editing those. And I think that's a pretty simple process that everybody does. One, two, three. You download the pictures, you pick out the ones you want to edit, then you pay attention to the individual pictures. But that whole process for me was becoming really, really slow, and I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. And so uh, that's what I started thinking about. Again, recapping what I used to. I used to download the images in Workshop, and I would keep record the images in Lightroom based on the simple things I look for each and every time. And this may be instructive for you too, because I know people in the past have asked, what do you do to decide if you want to keep an image or get rid of an image? And so my criteria is pretty simple. I look at these three things mainly, and this can be a whole other webinar too if someone wants to see it one day. I look at exposure. You know, the cool thing about digital photography now is you can you can be off on the exposure a little bit. I still try to get it right as much as I can in the camera, but the fact is we all mess up. And so, but you can still be fairly close on the exposure and still be able to edit your way out of that in post processing. So I'll look at the exposure based on, is the exposure right enough where I can fix? So that's the first thing I look at. And then the second thing is focus. Is it in focus enough? I know there's some solutions now, like some of the like I think Topaz will do it. If your image is a little soft, it'll sharpen it for you. I know my experience with software programs like that have been, sort of 50-50. Sometimes it works pretty good, sometimes it doesn't. And so what I usually rely back on, and if you listen to me very much, I say this all the time. Again, I try to get it right inside the camera first. I try not to rely on any software to fix what I could have gotten right in the first place. And so I start basing my criteria on exposure. Can I fix it? Focus. Is it in focus enough where I can fix it? And then composition. Same thing there. Did I compose it correctly, or did I get the composition off so badly that it's just going to take me forever to fix? And so I look at those three things. And really, when I'm deciding to whether keep an image or cull an image, it's based on those three factors. And some of the stuff I'll talk to you today is a little bit of muscle memory involved. You just got to practice it to get fast at it. But I've done it enough now where I'm pretty fast at looking at the picture and making an instant determination whether or not it meets those same three criteria. But with the workflow and the way I used to do it, here's the inherent problem with it. And it comes down to Lightroom. Lightroom uses embedded JPEG. So when you download your pictures, if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, it'll stay rendering smart previews. And what that means is it's trying to render those, it's got your raw images, it's trying to render a JPEG preview for to be able to show you on the screen when you're going through the images. And so because it has to take that step, and I say with my computer configuration, the way my computer is now, I use a 27-inch iMac. It's an older computer. I'm about to upgrade to a new one. And so it could be a little bit faster, but the problem is, and I've always had this problem, even when I buy a new computer, Lightroom, when you're trying to go through the images fast during the keep and cull process, Lightroom tends to lag. By the way, any of these things we're talking about today, this presentation is being recorded, and I'm also making notes on it. So the people that signed up for it first, just as a reminder, you'll get a copy of the recording in the end, and you'll also get a copy of the meeting notes. So you can, if you miss something on my first go through, you can go back and review it and learn this again. But this is such a simple process. I'm going to teach you today. I think you'll pick it up pretty quick. Anyway, I say with my computer configuration, I'm about to buy a new computer, but even when I buy new computers, because of that process, and it has to take a couple of extra software steps to render that JPEG, Lightroom tends to lag when I'm trying to go through the images fast during the keep and cull process. Again, I try to go through, when I'm doing that process, when I'm trying to decide which ones to keep or which ones to get rid of, that's the part I try to go through really, really fast. And so that creates log jam number one, just the keep and cull process. And so this is where the rubber meets the road. Here's how I speed up the keep and cull process. I've adopted a new software program for that first step that I do, just to keep and cull. And what I use is a software program called Photo Mechanic. And what photo mechanic is, it's a raw image renderer where it'll show you the exact raw images and not create that intermediary step of a JPEG preview. What I like about that, Photo Mechanic does such a better job than Lightroom on being able to look at the pictures and look at them quick when you first bring them in. And so essentially what we're doing is we're creating a step in our workflow to speed up the entire process. And I'll show you how to do that here in a minute if you'll stick with me on this. And so the reason, like I said, it's a raw file viewer, and I'll give you some options of other raw file viewers in a minute that you can look at because Photo Mechanic it's gone up in price a little bit. It's not necessarily super expensive, but it's not cheap either. But it's a raw file viewer that renders raw files instantly. I'll show you an example here in a second. And therefore, you can fly through the keep and call process. I mean, as fast as I can on my computer setup where Lightroom causes lag, I can just hold down on the right arrow button on my computer when I use Photo Mechanic, and it never lags. It just will go through all those raw images and allows me to look at them really, really quick. Again, that's the part where muscle memory, and you've got to get trained to do it, where you can look at pictures fast and make a determination. But you'd be surprised if you're going through pictures really, really quick, how much the bad ones stand out at you. And I'll demonstrate that workflow here in a little bit too. And so I'm going to play this a couple of times. This is a video I embedded into this presentation, and this isn't me doing this real time. I created a video and put it here, but I'm going to show you this Lightroom demo. I'm going to show you, I did it yesterday, and it's going to show you how all I'm doing is I'm not even holding down the right arrow. I'm just trying to press it fairly quickly, and you'll see how quick with my current computer configuration that Lightroom starts to pixelate the images and slow down on the rendering. There we go, it's going now. So that's where I'm starting to click through the images, and you can see it's starting to lag a little bit. Now it's starting to pixelate, and then it's just, you can't tell anything about it. Now it's really starting to lag. And now it's trying to re-render the image and catch up again. And again, I've got my computer's older, but it's fairly fast. I'm going to show you that again. My computer's older, but I built it with a lot of memory in it, and I could outrun this today. I'm going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on the very fastest Mac Pros, but again, it's cheaper just to go and try a different kind of software program. I'll show you this one more time. Again, all I'm doing is hitting the right arrow key at a pretty good pace, just I'm trying to make it lag to show you why it will lag, but just watch how fast it starts to lag. I mean, just instantly, the computer just can't keep up with it. And that's using Lightroom. So that creates a log jam right there, because each and every picture, if you use Lightroom, you got to go to the next one, let it render, look at it, let it render. Several seconds per picture that it takes. And that may not sound like a lot, but when you start taking a lot of pictures and you add that lag up over time, it amounts to a whole lot of time. Again, I keep saying I'll show you that in a minute. That's absolutely true. So yesterday, after I did my Lightroom demo, I did this Photo Mechanic demo. And again, I'm pressing the button, the right arrow key at the same rate. And you'll notice that I just finally quit because you can't make Photo Shelter lag. And so what I'm doing is when I'm going through my images, I'm looking at them that quick, and I can determine, I'm just staring at the subject. Is it in focus or not? Now, sometimes I have to stop and go back. But you can see as fast as I press the button, Photo Mechanic renders that picture. And this isn't, I'm not supported by Photo Mechanic. This isn't an advertisement for them. In fact, here in the next slide, I'm going to show you what some alternatives to Photo Mechanic. But the key thing is using a raw file viewer, because it helps alleviate that first log jam. And so other raw file viewers, I've used this one here. This is a good one too. It's called fastrawviewer.com. It's pretty inexpensive. I want to say it's about $20 to get that one. But it's pretty inexpensive, and it works really, really well. I was testing it the day before yesterday even. That one came recommended to me by one of my workshop guests, and I'm pretty pleased with that one. As Photo Mechanic price goes up, because really I'm not using Photo Mechanic for anything other than looking at the raw files at the very first. And then another one is one called Faststone. I think this Faststone only works on PC, I think, but that's another one I found yesterday that looks to be pretty well reviewed. And then this xnview.com, this is another one that came recommended by someone via email one day that they use. This xnview is for all platforms, and it works. It seems to work pretty good too. I've used it sparingly. I've used Fast Raw Viewer the most. I've used Photo Mechanic more than anything, but it works out. Earlier, I said I went to Botswana and took a lot of pictures and realized there was going to be a problem. And that's when I really started thinking about I need to develop a brand new workflow to solve this logjam problem. And this is what I came up with, what I'm teaching you today. And it seems to work pretty good. So here's the math. And this is going to sound crazy. When I was in Botswana doing back-to-back workshops back in the month of August, I shot 97,000 pictures during that whole month of August. Again, I got a heavy trigger finger. I like taking pictures. I'm there to shoot pictures. And people ask, why do you take so many? A lot of it's for insurance. And a lot of it's what I call blink insurance. If we've got a line out in front of you and it's eating, it may be blink insurance or it may be blade of grass insurance, whatever you want to call it. A lot of times if a lion's out there eating on a wildebeest like we saw, I'm going to take a lot of pictures because some pictures, the eyes may be half open or maybe closed or a blade of grass blows in front of it. I'm just trying to ensure while I'm there, I'm getting as many pictures as I can. So when I go back through them, there'll be some pictures that I'm really, really proud to show people. And when you're doing birds in flight is a war of attrition. You try to take a lot of pictures because when you're doing birds in flight, some of them are going to be out of focus. But in Botswana, I shot 97,000 pictures while I was there. And so my whole thought process is if I can figure out a way just to save a single second off each picture, off looking at each picture, just one single second, here's what the math looks like. And this is what I was going through. And if anyone who was in Botswana with me, on that trip, you remember while we're driving around one day, we're having this mental exercise. 97,000 pictures is times 1 second, 97,000 seconds. That equates to 1,616 minutes and 40 seconds. And here's the crazy thing. If I can figure out to save 1 second from looking at those pictures, that's 26 hours. That's almost 27 hours of time I'm saving just by going through the pictures I just took. That is almost 3/4 of a 40-hour work week you saved just by trying to figure out how to save 1 second. Well, with what I'm showing you today, it saves you a whole lot more time than that. Believe me, I was able to go through those 97,000 pictures. This is no joke with the way I'm showing you how to do it today. 97,000 pictures. I would usually do it in the evening after we ate supper. I'd sit at the computer. I've got a TV beside my computer. I'd turn TV on and watch something, and then or just have it on for noise, and then go through these pictures. And in probably about 5 or 6 days, working about an hour or two every night, I was able to go through all 97,000 pictures and pick out the good ones from the bad ones. Now, when you do this, you end up the way I shoot, I end up having a lot of repeats, but I don't mind that because it's so inexpensive now to buy memory. I just bought a new memory setup. It's a RAID system. It's 80 terabytes of storage. It's an enclosure that holds 4 20 terabyte drives. It's a RAID 5 enclosure. 80 terabytes of storage, and it's a long-term investment too. But 80 terabytes of storage, which probably maybe some in this that are listening may need that much, but most don't. But that cost me about, I think, $1,300 for 80 terabytes of storage. And so I don't mind keeping repeats because, again, they're digital files, and I've had this happen before. Sometimes if you only keep one of a series, that one picture, they just, for unknown reasons, have a tendency to degrade sometimes, and you can't open it in the future. So for me, I may have 20 or 30 pictures that look almost identical, but I'll keep them anyway because it's just cheap insurance to keep in the end on making sure you've got the images there. And so that's how the math works out, and it's huge. Now I would argue, and I'll tell you later on how much I think I save in doing that. I would argue that I'm saving a lot more than 1 second per image. So I'm saving, I bet I'm saving 4 or 5 seconds per image by using the system I'm talking about today. So logjam number 1 is just that initial keep and cull process, bringing the pictures in and just trying to decide which ones you want to keep or cull. My recommendation, again, I will drill this down for you into 2 simple steps. My recommendation is develop 2 platforms you use, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. And so the second log jam I find is the first edit. Once you've decided which pictures you're going to keep, and you've decided which pictures you're going to uh, edit, how do you speed this process up? And so this is another thing I did timed yesterday, and this is how I used to do it. And so what I'm doing here is I would select each individual image that I want to edit, and then the first thing I do, and this may sound a little bit sacrilegious to say, but I'm a fan. I think Lightroom does a really good job of this. I'm a fan of the first edit I do is I hit the auto button and see what Lightroom thinks it looks like. I think that's a really good place to start. I may change some sliders after that, but I think it's a really good place to start. But I don't know whether you've thought about this or not, but just the process of moving the mouse, and this, again, this is all incremental time you're saving, but it adds up when you're looking at a bunch of images. Every time you move a mouse and go up to the auto button and click auto, that takes time. And so every time I move the mouse down and select the next picture and go back up and hit auto, it takes time. So I did this yesterday to figure out how much time it would take typically. These are my keeper images. So I'm just going through and editing a few. You can watch the timer there, and I'll go through this twice. You can watch the stopwatch there, and you'll see what it come up with. So there, I'm selecting an image, I'm going up and I'm hitting auto. Then I'm going down, I'm selecting another one, and I'm hitting auto again. And then I'm selecting another one. I'm just doing this at random, just a time. And I'm not taking my time, but those 3 images took 13.33 seconds to do all that. Doesn't sound like a bunch, but imagine doing that with 10,000 images and how much time that takes up over time. It's tremendous. Oh, let me go through that again. So I'm going to play this one more time. So I'm selecting an image, hitting auto just to see what it looks like. Go through, pick another image, hit auto just to see what it looks like. And hit auto. So hitting auto on 3 pictures, the time it took to go to one picture, select it, hit auto, go to the next picture, select it, hit auto, 13.3 seconds. And so that's 4.44 seconds per image once I did the math. And this, again, I get it. This stuff sounds kind of nerdy, but my thinking is I just try to figure out a way that you can shave time off each step of the process. And when you do, that time, like I showed you on the 97,000 images in Botswana, that time adds up. And it adds up in a big way, more than you know. So for 10,000 images, that 4.44 seconds per image represents 12 hours of time is how much it should take you to do what I just showed you in the video, 12 hours of time. But I think there's a better way of doing that. And so here's my tease. What if I showed you a shortcut that drastically reduces all that time? And that's what I'm going to show you right quick. And I think I got a demonstration coming up on that in a minute. So here's my 2-step solution to breaking the log jam that we keep talking about. This is where I'm going to distill it down into simple terms. Step number 1, skip initially importing your images not from Lightroom. I said that wrong, into Lightroom. So you skip that first step. Instead of plugging your card in and then downloading them in Lightroom, I'm going to suggest something different. Drag and drop your files from a card to a folder on the desktop. Very first thing you do when you get home. That way, you're creating a step, but you're saving a lot of time by using another image, a raw file viewer. And so, in other words, what I suggest is you open up your card reader, just drag them into there first thing. I don't know if this makes a difference, but I kind of feel like it makes a difference. You could do the same thing from your card reader, but I kind of feel like, and somebody that's really good at computers can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, I kind of feel like my computer works faster if everything is on the hard drive it's reading from. So if it has to reference these images from an external hard drive that's plugged in to a USB 2.0 or a USB 3.0, or I think the Thunderbolt is a lot faster, but if it has to reference those images off of somewhere else beside the computer it's sitting on, then that creates a little bit of lag. And so for me, I found out for my setup, if I'll just take the images, open them from my card, and then take them all and drag them into a folder, very first step I do. And then from there, I use Photo Mechanic or another raw image viewer to do all the initial keep and cull process. Again, I showed you on the video earlier just how fast it is just to go from one image to the next. So again, step 1, I just drag all the images into a folder on my desktop, and then I go through from there and decide which one I want to keep and which ones I want to delete. And so I got to stop sharing that for a second. Let me share another window real fast on my demonstration. This will be a quick demonstration. So here's Photo Mechanic. And I usually don't, sometimes I hear people say, hey, you take good pictures. And I tell them, well, you don't get to see the bad ones. Well, today you're going to get to see the bad ones. And so these are a bunch of pictures I took of hummingbirds, silhouettes out just right outside the barn here. And so all I do when I get it into Photo Mechanic or some other kind of image raw viewer is I've got my finger on two buttons. I'm looking at them big and I'm going through them one at a time like this as fast as I can. And when I see one that, oops, someone try to come in, hang on. And when I see one I don't like, I just give it a 1, and that gives it a 1-star rating. So as I go through these pictures this quick that I'm showing you, and then I see pictures I don't like that need to be culled, I just slow down at that point and I give them a 1 rating. So in the end, I just tell Photo Mechanic to show me all of the, I tell Photo Mechanic to show me all the 1-star images that I just did. And then I just select those 1-star images and delete them. I mean, it's that fast. So I go through it really quick to just edit them down like that. And again, I mean, that 97,000 images I keep talking about from Botswana, I did it in just a few hours because of that raw file viewing capability that I can just go through those images as fast as I can hold the button down. I can look at them and tell if they're good or bad. Now the process goes, you know, I'll just be going through them quick and I can look at them and tell if it's good or bad. And because it's even though you're going through them fast, it's amazingly simple to see when a bad image pops up. And then if I go past it, I just back up a little bit, mark it as a bad one, mark it as a 1-star, you know, all the ones in the series, and then keep going on after that. It's just a really quick process. And so step 2 that I'll show you a demonstration of that I do, once I've culled all the images, all the bad images out of that folder I just talked about, dragging your image into, then from that folder, I import them all into Lightroom. And then you carry on as if you always would. And then once I get them all into Lightroom, I go through and select the images I wish to edit. I don't edit every single image I have. I just go through from a lightbox view where you can see a bunch of images and pick the images I want to edit, and then give them a star or color label so that way I'll mark them and I know I want to edit them later, and then just edit those select images in batch. And I'll show you a demonstration of that real quick. So let me, oops, hang on a second. Let me share Lightroom with you real fast. Okay. So after I've done the keep and cull process, I've got rid of all the pictures that I don't want to keep. Then I'll go through Lightroom and look at it in loop view like this. You can get rid of the side panels if you want to, and look at them, see more pictures on your screen. But I'll go through and look at them, and I'll decide the pictures I want to keep. I'll hold down Command in Apple, and I think it's Control in PC. But I'll just select multiple images that I want to edit later on, and then I'll give them a label. And then once I set the label to red like that, then I can go through and use my attribute filter, and I can tell it to, oops, hang on a second. I can say, show me all the pictures that I labeled red. Oh, hang on one second. I'll have something set right here. There we go. I can say, show me all the pictures labeled red. And this is where it speeds up. So once you get to the edit process, pay attention here. Once you get it to the edit process, you can do Command A or Control A in a PC, I think. You can do Command A and select all these images at one time. And then when you go to the develop menu, You remember earlier I showed you how I used to do it. I'd go to one image at a time, select it, hit auto, go to the next one. But when you go into the develop menu, you can then look here at the bottom right hand corner. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but there's a button that says sync, and it's got like a little light switch on it. You can hit that light switch where it turns on auto sync. And then once you're done there, all those images you just selected you want to edit, if you hit auto, you can see it right there popped up. Uh, it auto updated every one of those images. So instead of me having to go back and forth to the auto button each and every time, it applied those auto updates to every one of those images at the same time. And so just that process of moving my mouse around and hitting the same button each and every time is really eliminated when you use that little step. And again, all you do is select the images you want to edit, give them a color label, select for that color label, and then once you select all the images you want to edit, turn on that auto sync, hit auto, and it'll apply the auto settings to each and every one of those images. It doesn't apply them the same to each images. It looks at each image and then applies those auto settings to how it thinks that image ought to be. And just that one step, it took me 4.44 seconds per image a while ago. Now I can edit 10,000 images, and it'll take about 4 seconds to do 10,000, apply auto to 10,000 images. So that 12 hours we talked about, you've reduced it down to about 4 seconds at that point, because it'll auto edit every one of those images. And then the last step I do after that, I don't really talk about it here, but then I just go back and do a quality control. Those 10,000 images I applied auto edit to, then I go back through and just make sure that that Lightroom did a good job, and if it didn't, make any minor adjustments from there. But just that one step right there saves me a ton of time in the end. And so by doing all those things, it just, again, it's a 1-2 method of clearing that log jam. By doing all those things, you end up saving yourself a ton of time. And so the recap on all that, my advice today is skip Lightroom and use a raw viewer for the keep and cull process. Drag and drop those images from the card to the desktop when you first download them, and then look at them in the raw viewer first and decide which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to get rid of. Again, I think the raw viewers, Photo Mechanic, I forgot the other one I mentioned earlier. Photo Mechanic and the other options I mentioned earlier are so much faster than Lightroom at looking at those raw images and looking at them quickly that it's just not even, and for my computer setup right now, it's not even close. And so again, when you do that, when you do step one, you are creating one step, because then you have to drag and drop the images from your card to the desktop. But then once you get the keep and cull process done, it's just the same way you've always done it. Import those remaining images into your Lightroom catalog and into your Lightroom folder system, and then you can kind of continue on as usual. So that's the only step it creates, and it's not a hard step at all to do. Again, you're creating one step to save hours of time on the back end of it. And then step number two, once you import the remaining images into Lightroom that we just talked about, you select the images you want to edit, use the auto sync feature to batch edit those images with just a single click. And so one word of caution though, once you turn that auto sync on, and what I do is I'll turn the auto sync on, hit auto to apply what the Lightroom thinks the auto settings ought to be to every one of those images I've selected. But then once I'm done there, you got to turn that auto sync back off, because then if you start trying to crop an image, it'll apply that crop to all the images. So once you turn the auto sync on and you use it for that one step, turn it back off, because as you go through and start working on each individual image, you don't want that same crop or the same color selection or mask or whatever you put on the image to apply to all of them. And so that's a simple 2-step method that I promised you in the beginning that really will help speed up your workflow. And with that said, by using these 2 steps, I estimate I save myself 10 to 15 hours of time for every 10,000 images I shoot. I double checked that number this morning, and I do believe that to be true. And I think that's a conservative estimate even. So, yeah, you may not go to Botswana and shoot 97,000 images, but I guarantee everybody in here has been somewhere, if you go on an extended trip, where you're taking 10,000 images on a trip somewhere. And so, but that 10 to 15 hours of time, that's more time you can spend out taking more pictures and just perfecting the front end of the craft. Because I found out too, this is something I don't mention in this presentation until now. I found out too, the better you can get pictures on the front end, the more time it saves you on the back end. If you just get it right to begin with, you have less work to do on the back end too. So that's the third step that I really don't include in this two-step process that I'm talking about today. But that third step right there really does save you a lot of time, because now out of that 97,000 pictures, uh, I ended up keeping 82,000 of them. So I only culled 15,000 pictures out of that whole shoot. So I don't know what the percentage of that is. Someone can figure that out for me, but a good 80 something percent, I'm thinking I kept 80 something. Yeah, it's rough. If it was 100,000 pictures and I kept 84,000, so I culled 16% of them. That's a rough and tumble number off my head. 15 to 16% of the images I culled, and that's a high keeper rate. Back in the day, I never knew why it was such bragging rights, but you'd hear photographers talk about, oh yeah, if I for every 2,000 or every 1,000 images I go out and shoot, I hope I have 2 or 3 keepers. Well, if that's the best you can do, you might ought to find another profession. And so, because with these modern cameras today, there's such good tools on helping you get it all right. I think you can do the last step and really understand your camera, really understand things like focal length, depth of field, shutter speed, ISO, and do all of those things you can do and go back. I've preached this a million times. If you listen to my webinars enough, do all those things you can do from a fundamental photography standpoint to try to get it right the first time. And again, that's going to save you time on the back end to help clear up those log jams we're talking about. But I'd be interested to hear if anyone thinks what I told you today is valuable and you adopt this two-step process, how much time you think it'll save you in the end. Or if you're already doing something similar, I'll share my email address with you in a minute. Share that with me. I'd love to hear if you think this is valuable too. I know for me, and again, this is fairly recent in this past. I've always kind of done it, but it wasn't until after Botswana I really systemized my approach. Once I developed my system and put it in place, I mean, we did a workshop to Sable Island a month ago up in Canada. Shot a lot of pictures there of the wild horses, and it literally, I mean, it took me no time when I got home to go through those pictures, get rid of the bad ones, and then edit the next ones for the next step I'm going to do, which is putting them on the blog, on the trip report, social media. I've got another website I don't talk about much, russellgraves.com, that goes on there. So and I don't talk about that website. That's more of a business to business website where people buy stock imagery from me. So so the process of me taking it from a camera to the final use of it is just, it's sped up so quick, saves me so much time. I don't fret it nearly like I used to in the end. And so I think with that said, oh, I got a few more tips. Here's some other time saving tips, and I'm going to open up for questions if anybody has any. Other time saving tips you can do in Lightroom. Again, me saying all that is I'm not bashing Lightroom. I still use it every single day, but I'm saying if you replace the front end of your workflow and using one of those raw file viewers, you'll see how much that'll speed up. And then in Lightroom, you can use that auto sync feature. I use color labels or star ratings sometimes to find images quickly. I use color labels and this is a part of my organizational scheme, which is again another webinar all in its own. I use color labels when I'm doing my first initial edits to identify which pictures I want to edit. I like color labels rather than stars, because when I'm going through the pictures pretty quick, if I'm just scrolling through the whole bunch of them and not using any of the tools to just isolate the red images or whatever, I can see the colors quicker than I can identify which pictures have stars on them. So that's just a personal preference. I use color labels instead of stars. There's no right way or wrong way. It's just whatever your way is. I tend to use color labels. I think it works quicker for me. And then when I'm kind of going through the process, I use tools like My Keyworder for Lightroom, because that'll allow you to select 1,000 images, for example, and you can bulk add keywords to images like location information, or the date is already built into pictures. You don't have to add that, but location information, what's in the picture. Maybe it's the Grand Tetons, maybe it's a picture of a bison or a badger or something like that. You can add bulk keywords without having to add keywords to each individual image. That saves a lot of time there for me. And then uh, I utilize the metadata search a lot to drill down on things like dates or cameras used, because a lot of times, I don't know if you are this way, but for me, I can remember, I'm not going to say I can remember every single picture I've ever taken and the circumstances behind them, but I can remember a lot of them for some reason. That's my secret superpower. But I can't remember everything. And so a lot of times I'll be trying to find a picture that I knew I took in October of 23, and then I can use that metadata search to drill down on the picture I'm looking for and be able to find specific dates or specific cameras I used or specific lenses I used, or if I used a flash or not, the flash was turned on. All that metadata stuff is built into every picture we take, and you can use Lightroom to help you drill down on that and find images quicker. So with that said, are there any questions? Let me look at chat. Looks like there's a lot of questions here. Let me go into this and I'll answer questions here right quick. And if you got any questions, you can turn your microphone on and ask them. April says, isn't Photomechanic a subscription now? It is a subscription, but you can also buy a standalone on that, April. I own the standalone version. I haven't bought the subscription yet because I don't think it's I don't want to pay for it long term just to keep using it. I mean, I do that with enough software, so that's one less. But the price has gone up. That's why I recommend using one of those other raw photo viewers too. Try those out. Christine asked if I'm already using a free or paid version of Photomechanic. I use a paid version of it. And so, Christine, if you came in late, and I did see you come in late, go back when I share the video, go back and I make some recommendations of some other viewers that may be less expensive than Photomechanic. April asked another question. I'll get back to that question, April. Bill says, thanks, picked up a couple of new trips. Or Skip said that, thank you. Robert says, do you create or use presets? I'll use presets sometimes, Roberts, and that will speed things up. But this may be my ignorance and my lack of knowledge on how to use Lightroom. I tend not to use presets because I kind of think each individual is its own creation, and I don't know that any presets I've ever used is kind of a one size fits all. I kind of like to edit each image on its own, but I'm willing to do that and happy to do that in the beginning because I've sped up my process so fast using the two techniques I showed you today. And another thing, and this is a Russell situation too, and this is kind of how I was trained. I tend not to edit my pictures a lot for a couple of reasons. One, I really try to get them right in the camera. I keep preaching that. But number two, so much of my life has been spent, and I still do a lot of it, shooting pictures for magazines and commercial clients. And usually when I do that, they want a pretty simple representation of what I shot a picture of. And if there's any really heavy-handed editing, they tend to do that. And so I don't try to interpret what they're trying to get. So my pictures that I do are a fairly faithful version of what I saw in the end. So in the end, I don't really do a whole lot of heavy-handed in the end. Michael says he really likes Fast Raw Viewer. That's the name of that. I couldn't think of the name of. He says it can't run it and has handled everything I throw at it quickly. Yeah, or it can handle everything he throws at it. Really quick editing, and that's right. And that's why I recommended it. I've tried that one. I really like that Fast Raw Viewer because again, Lightroom tends to lag. I mean, it's just a fact. And so when you don't use Lightroom for that initial keep and color process and use one of these raw image viewers, it just speeds up the whole process so much faster that it ends up saving you a ton of time in the end. And then we got people from all over Michigan and Maine and Florida and Garland, Texas, right down the road. And then let me see what else. Okay, so April asked another question. What do you do if you have tons of images in Lightroom already to speed things up? There's a few things you can do. I mean, this is going to go pretty deep, April, into some of the settings, and I'm trying to do this from memory, so I may not remember everything. You can clear your cache or increase your cache size if you go into the catalog settings in the preferences of Lightroom. You can do that. You can create smart previews because smart previews even though they're not as fast as using a raw file viewer, they're at least faster than trying to render each and every raw image natively on Lightroom, and so that helps as well. Uh, Other things I do to help speed me up, and I can, if you'll send me an email, April, I will send you another webinar I did in the past on how I organize my pictures. I just try to be faithful to an organizational scheme in the end, where I file everything by subject matter. I don't worry about dates because dates are built into the metadata, but I file everything by subject matter. And again, that's a Russell thing too, because a typical magazine may contact me and say, we want a picture of a bobwhite quail. They're not saying, well, I want a picture of a bobwhite quail that was shot in April of 24. They say, I just want a picture of a bobwhite quail. So for me, subject matters a lot. Date doesn't really matter. And so because of that, I file everything I've got by subject. And I've got just shy of 1 million pictures in my Lightroom library. And I can find any one of those 1 million pictures in just a matter of a minute, maybe 2 minutes, just by using the organizational schemes that I talk about in that webinar. And it's just an easy way for me to find images, and it's just an easy way for me to find images and go through them really, really quickly. And this is, when you organize by subject, you're still looking for a needle in a haystack, but when you start organizing by subject, in my opinion, you're just making that haystack a whole lot smaller, and it's easier to find pictures then. Uh, when you say, can you send this last thing you mentioned to all attendees? Lori, are you talking about the webinar that I talked about? I can, but when I send you out the replay in the webinar, and it should say it in the notes too, since I mentioned it, uh, I'll make sure that whatever we talked about is in there, and that you can go ahead and download that. And then I think that's all the questions for now. If anybody has any more questions you want to add to the chat, or if you want to, okay, yes, the webinar, I got it. Or if you want to jump in and use the microphone, I'll hang around for a little bit after this. And then with that said, that's a cool picture I shot last week. We did a workshop out at Redlands Ranch, my place out in West Texas, and we had a lot of quail come in. If you read the trip report, you'll know that these bobwhite quail are an imperiled grassland birds, and so anytime we see them come in to the water hole, I really, really like seeing them. And they were as animated as I'd ever seen them this time. They were coming in and giving themselves dust baths and kind of jostling with each other and flapping their wings and doing all kinds of cool stuff. So this is one of my favorite pictures I took last week of this guy giving them a dust bath with 3 of his friends looking over in the background. But if you have any questions to send me later on, if you know, I always respond to questions. My email address is russell@hackberryfarmtexas.com. Always love talking photography with people. Always love to answer your questions. Love to see you out on a workshop sometimes. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming up in the future. Not only international stuff that people tend to enjoy, but also we've got a lot of stuff here in Texas and elsewhere in the United States coming up in 26. And believe it or not, we're already looking at 27. I spent this morning on the phone planning some 27 trips. So it's always something. And so anyway, if you want to talk about any more of that, I'll take the time you need to help you understand each and every excursion we do, and get you on the right one for you. And I think I can almost guarantee you're going to take great pictures, because you will never want to guarantee you're going to see wildlife. I'm not willing to call my shot there yet, but we always see a lot of great stuff. People come away with a lot of great pictures. But the two most important things we do on every one of the workshops we do is we have a whole lot of fun. I'd be willing to bet we'll have more fun on our workshops than you will on any other workshop that you have. And we always leave like as friends and family, and we always stay in touch. So and that makes me feel good when we do that. So if any of that stuff interests you, hit me up, come along. Love to see you on that thing. And with that said, let me double check the questions one last time. And I think that's my last slide right there. Thank you all for joining in. Stay tuned. Later on today, you'll get the meeting notes and a replay of this webinar, and then later on it'll get posted to to the Hackberry Farm website, and you'll be able to watch it anytime you want. So hope you found this valuable. Stay in touch. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.